football. The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
You know, I tend to throw around the word chutzpah quite a bit. And if you're not familiar with Yiddish, you may not know what it means. And there's really no literal interpretation of what the word means. But generally speaking, chutzpah is a combination of guts and stupidity. Now, there's no question that Dan Campbell exhibited guts last night. We can debate whether or not it was stupidity, but when you're 9-1 and everything is going right for you despite multiple injuries on defense, when you haven't lost since September, why not? Why not? And it worked out well for him last night as the Detroit Lions increased their best record of the NFL with yet another victory, and they beat the Green Bay Packers, which is actually going to be beneficial for Washington because Green Bay is now only one win ahead of Washington. And if you look at the schedule remaining, the Packers are at Seattle. That's not going to be easy. They're home against New Orleans. They should beat them. Then there's a big game against Minnesota. That's going to be big for the Vikings. That's December 29th. It's now a 1 o'clock game. I bet they flex that. And then January 5th, they close against the Chicago Bears. Between Seattle and Minnesota, it's possible they lose both of those games. And with what Washington's got for the last four, they will be favored in 3 of the 4. And we'll see if Kirk Cousins comes back to life this week back in Minnesota. But it's possible that they can win 3 of 4. I don't think they'll beat the Eagles, but if they win 3 of 4, they might overtake the Packers for the 6th spot, and that's important for seeding. Likely they're going to have to play on the road, but instead of playing Philadelphia, maybe you're playing Minnesota, something like that. So it's setting up well for them, and, of course, it's setting up well for the Packers. And you wonder why Dan Campbell did this. I mean, if he's got a team that's around 500 and fighting for the playoffs, he's getting killed today on sports radio, especially in Detroit. But he's now a beloved figure, and he's a guy that showed you he's not going with convention. They had it all set up. 21-yard line. It's 4th down. They have only 28 seconds left on the clock. Okay, you kick the field goal to go ahead 34-31. You're leaving 28 seconds, or I guess a couple will tick off with the field goal. So say it's 25 seconds left for the Packers to go down the field and kick a field goal to tie it and send it into overtime. I mean, everything, I guess maybe the analytics have changed, but it would seem that the thing you do is kick the 38, 39-yard field goal and you trust your defense. That's not what he did. And I'll tell you something, offensive players love this because that's the coach saying, I got confidence in you. It's less than a yard. I know you guys are going to pick it up. We're going to be able to burn off the clock. We're going to kick a field goal, and we're going to get the hell out of here. And Damian Woody, former offensive lineman with the Jets and the Patriots, now an analyst with ESPN, gave the big thumbs up for Campbell for what he did last night.
Dan Campbell is a psycho.
Yeah.
He's a psycho, but he's a great type of psycho because he always does these type of things. He goes for it on 4th down on the plus side of the field. When he's backed up, it doesn't matter. And in that moment in time, he knew he had trust in his guys. Like, when you have arguably the best offensive line and the best backfield in football, that's what you do.
Yeah,
you trust those guys to do that.
Here's the thing. He did that on 3rd down, the same exact play, same side to David Montgomery, and it got snuffed.
Yeah.
He went for it on 4th and 1 at his own 30. It got snuffed.
Yeah.
He's playing some sort of chess that I don't understand because obviously he's trying to burn out the clock and just have a kick to win it. But, boy, it feels just almost reckless. That did feel reckless. It just seems crazy.
That's Dan Campbell. That's what you call a coach that has complete confidence in his guys. It's when you empower your players in that moment. I remember vividly when I was playing, there would be times when coaches like, okay, what do you guys want to do? And we tell the coach, yeah, we're going to go for it. and the coach puts it on the players to go out there and execute in that moment. That's exactly what Dan Campbell did in that moment right there.
And doesn't that seem hard to believe? I mean, he played for Bill Belichick. You say to Bill Belichick what you want to do. Doesn't Belichick tell you? But, that's the inside from somebody who's played it. And, yeah, offensive linemen especially, they love that. Yeah, we're going to get you a yard. Of course we're going to get you a yard. Now, it's a shaky play where they got that done. If you watched it last night, I've seen the highlights. I made it to halftime last night. But if you see the highlights, Jared Goff is falling down as he's handing off to David Montgomery. I mean, it's very possible that they get stopped there. And not only is overtime in play, but it's in play that the Packers can go down the field with enough time to kick a field goal. But that's not the way it worked out. He was able to run it down to the final play and kick the field goal. And Detroit is 12-1. They got a game-and-a-half lead on Philadelphia for the number one seed in the NFC, which means a first-round bye. It's now only one team in each conference that gets that, and they move a game-and-a-half ahead of the Vikings. So, obviously, in the post-game news conference last night, the first question to Campbell was, why'd you do it?
I just felt like we needed to end it on offense, and I did not want to give that ball back, and I believe we could get that. I believe we could convert, and I trusted that O-line. I trusted David, and they came through for us. It's a hell of a call by Ben, It just I knew how I wanted to play this game. The team knew it, and everything in me told me that let's finish this, and so we did.
Ben being Ben Johnson, who turned down the Commanders last year, kind of obnoxiously. Ownership was flying to Detroit to meet with him when he put out a statement that he had unfinished business in Detroit. Now, he apparently is the top choice in Chicago, but, the Bears are known not to pay the top dollar. And he will certainly have other offers, especially if Detroit goes on to win the Super Bowl this year. I mean, it's still a lot of football left to play. They've had a number of injuries on defense. There's a talk now that Aiden Hutchinson could make it back if they make it to the Super Bowl, but they got to get there. And they still have football left to play. But, boy, what an impressive win last night. And what chutzpah on the part of Dan Campbell. Ryan Zimmerman is promoting the 20th anniversary of the Nationals. And I'll get to his comments yesterday on the MLB Network. Man, it is I spent a good part of my career here on radio saying, when are we going to get baseball? When are we going to get baseball? The Washington Senators left me when I was 13 years old. I had a son who was older than that when we finally had baseball again. But now, wow, it's been 20 years since they came from Montreal, and Zimmerman is helping to promote that, and we'll hear what he had to say on the MLB Network coming up shortly. But I wanted to get to this. The Sunday night game looks like the most promising of the weekend now that we really had the game of the week last night. With what we're going to see on Sunday, it's the Chargers at Kansas City. And not surprisingly, what Jim Harbaugh has done, he's changed everything, changed the way the so-called culture is with the Chargers. And and the news yesterday makes the Bears even look worse in that apparently Jim Harbaugh reached out to them last year when he knew he was going to leave Michigan to see if they were interested. They had no interest in him. And now he's doing great things with the Chargers. And he would have had a rookie quarterback. Now he's got a veteran quarterback, and this could be the time when finally the luck runs out for Kansas City, where they've been able to win a lot of close games. But Derwin James is a Pro Bowl safety, and he was on yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show. Ryan Leaf filling in, and he talked about the new coaching staff that they have with the Chargers, not just Jim Harbaugh, but the defensive coordinator Jesse Minter, and the difference he's made.
Man, I can't stop smiling every day I come into the building. It's just exciting to come to work with these men, not only the coaches, but the players. It's just ever since OTAs, we've been just working our butt off just to go out there and compete. And we finally starting to see the results that we've been putting in, and we just want to keep going hard. And Coach Minter, man, I can't say nothing but great things about him. He's man, one of a kind, man. I haven't been around a coach like him and Coach Harbaugh,
You spoke incredibly highly of Jimbo Fisher, your head coach in college. I spent like 5 seasons with him every fall. Football genius. I mean, when you find guys that can flip that switch in you, Jim Harbaugh shows up. There's a different mentality as a former player. Jesse Minter. You see guys acting different. I mean, I'm watching Justin this year. There's like a little swagger with him. He's throwing a touchdown. He's doing some things. I mean, what's the locker? It's allowed the locker room to be a little freer, it feels, and it comes across.
Yes, sir. Everybody's playing free. Nobody's playing uptight. And we just creating that family environment. Coach Harbaugh, he's you got the families that practice on Fridays, Saturdays. It's just creating the family environment that I've never been around in the NFL in my 7 years. So, man, it's just been a lot of fun. And when you can make it about family, man, you just want to go that much harder for that person. And offense get along with offense, defense get along. And it's just the whole team coming together.
It's incredibly different when you walk into an atmosphere like that. I remember that when I was in Tampa with Tony Dungy. Like, you just go from a coaching staff that's so welcoming in terms of what makes things easy. And you wonder why that hasn't always been the case, because you want your guys to be the most, relaxed going into football games. Talk to me about the Atlanta game. I mean, these games this year kind of fit the Harbaugh mold, right? It's offense trying to run the football, hold people back, but defense really had to close out that game. Talk about that kind of final play. They went empty. They brought Drake London over the cross in the middle. He kind of stumbles, and you just knew they had to get to a point. You stepped right in front of it and ended the game with that interception.
First of all, I feel like Coach did a great job all day calling great plays. I feel like we was in position to make all the plays we needed to make. And like you said, I just seen Drake London in the slot, and as soon as I see him release the ball, I just try to make a play on it for my team. And like I said, Coach made a great call, and all year long, he's just making great calls. And as a defense, I feel like we just come in that much closer to where we want to be.
Yeah, you get the guys up front getting after the quarterback, Bosa, that crew. It's been fun to watch as a former Charger to see that defense kind of going back into the Rodney Harrison, Junior Seau days. That's some fun era football. And we watched the Al-Shaair hit on Trevor Lawrence. As a defender, they've made it incredibly difficult on you guys in terms of what the heck is a quarterback going to do? Is he trying to make a little move to get a few more yards, to pick up a first down, to extend a drive, to end a game? You got suspended earlier, and Coach Harbaugh was incredibly disappointed, as was, I think, a lot of people that watch football, realistic football. How tough is it to make decisions in the moment, in those split seconds, to make those tackles and do the right thing in the eyes of Park Avenue in New York City?
It's extremely hard. Like you say, you're playing a game at a fast speed, a fast tempo, and as a defender, you're going to just try to get the guy down. And sometimes the angle can change. The guy can see you duck sometimes. And it's just like we got to adjust. Like I say, they want to clean up the game, man. And like I say, I'm all for it, man. And I'm trying to find new ways to get better at it myself. I'm still working at it. And I just love to play, man, honestly, man. And like I say, it's definitely hard on the defenders, I feel like, especially because you don't know if he's going to slide. You don't want to give up the first down as a defender, so it's just tough.
Yeah, they put you in a tough spot. They put you in an absolutely crazy tough spot in terms of what you have to do. Speaking of Coach Harbaugh, so I don't know if you know this. So Coach Harbaugh was my backup in San Diego.
I didn't know that.
He taught me, Derwin, he taught me how to be a professional. It was, that quarterback room was crazy. If he could have been a player coach, I bet you we win a ton more games if he had been able to be the coach. What's it been like to have him again? And how active is he? Like, is he out there slinging the ball around? Is he catching the ball? I mean, how physical is he with you guys in practice? Seems like a lot of fun, and it looks like he's doing it.
I feel like Coach Harbaugh is all in, man. Honestly, man, ever since OTAs, he's been pulling sleds, man, honestly, since we've been working out. Every fourth quarter drill, no lie, like he's over there doing manuals with us, man. He's really in. He has his cleats on. His cleat game is crazy. He got all the different Jordans, man. It's crazy. So, man.
His Jordan game from his time at Michigan. That's from.
Yeah. He have his cleats on, man. And he all in it, man. Like you say, he a player coach, man. Every day I strive to be like him, like a leader, man. When it comes to that leader ability to affect the whole room and the whole organization, I feel like he's one of a kind when it comes to that.
Yeah, his track record. He goes places, you win. You get a chance to win a championship. Yes, that is his track record. It makes me laugh. You've been around Justin for so long. I go away and play golf with Justin every summer, and he's the kindest, most kind of unassuming killers. That's a really good way to put it. He's an unassuming killer. He'll go out and rip your heart out with the way he can throw the football and be a leader. But did you see the video of when Coach Harbaugh did the pregame thing with the quarterbacks he likes to do where he hits them on the shoulders and they punch him? Like Justin didn't know it was coming. Like, and he's trying to like be in it too, but it looks so awkward. What's the strangest kind of pregame thing that coach has kind of come over and batted you up and got you ready physically? What has he done to get you fired up?
The same thing. Like I've been a time where he just came and hit me on the back. Let's go. I need your best. Let's go. So he always just trying to get us ready to go, man. Especially that pregame speech in the locker room. It's no speeches like Harbaugh's speeches, man. He always got one of a kind for you.
You guys get to see the Chiefs again here soon. They're the team at the top. I've never felt like the Chargers have ever in any way feared the Chiefs in Arrowhead or whenever. What's it like going up against Patrick Mahomes as an all-pro safety? And how important is it for your team, I think, entering the playoffs to defeat a very good AFC team? The Ravens had a chance a week ago with you guys. When you get a chance to the Chiefs and the teams that you're probably going to meet in the playoffs down the stretch, how important is it you guys to show up and play well?
First of all, it's always exciting to go against the Chiefs. I feel like the games come down to the end every time. And like you say, we have to go in on the road and be able to beat those type of teams, because if you want to go where we want to go in the playoffs far, those are the type of teams you have to beat. And I trust every man in this locker room, from offense, defense to special teams, and I know we preparing that way, and I can't wait to the game Sunday night.
Sunday night, Chargers 3.5-point underdogs at Kansas City, but the Chiefs, they've been winning by the hair of their chinny chin chin, and this might be the time. I mean, the Chargers, tough loss to Baltimore in the Harbaugh Bowl, but now with the chance to really make some noise and really shake up the whole AFC picture, because if the Chargers go in there and win and the Bills take care of business in Los Angeles against the Rams, then as of late Sunday night, the number one seed in the AFC would be the Buffalo Bills, which would mean a first-round bye. And if it gets to the AFC Championship game, they would play it in Buffalo and not Kansas City for a change. Though last year wasn't played in Kansas City; it was played in Baltimore, and the Chiefs advanced. So that'll probably be the game of the weekend, and that's the Sunday night game with the Chargers at Kansas City. Coming up, the 20th anniversary of the Washington Nationals. Boy, 20 years went by fast, didn't they? Ryan Zimmerman, who's Mr. National, works for the team, promoting the 20th anniversary, showed up on the MLB Network yesterday. We'll play some of that conversation as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Bram's coming up at 11 o'clock to wrap up the week. By the way, if you did not hear this, Bram did an interview earlier this week with Adam Peters, and the news coming out of this is that Peters told him, and I don't think there's any reason why he would tell him something different at this point. There's really no reason to, but he said the acquisition of Marshawn Lattimore was for more than this year. He has 2 years left on his contract, and I guess they're hoping to see in the last 4 games of the season, and it's certainly trending that he'll be able to play against the team where he just came from. New Orleans wants to get back from the bye, but they're hoping he shows them something in the playoffs when they get there, if they get there, and that he's worthwhile to bring back for the next 2 years. So this wasn't just a move with the team trending towards the playoffs. This is more of a long-term thing, and they believe Lattimore has something left in the tank. So Bram may have more to say about that. Coming up at 11 o'clock. Meantime, the Washington Nationals are about to celebrate their 20th anniversary. And if you are, let's say you're 30 years old, you've had this team for most of your life. But I'm in my mid-60s. I remember not the original Senators. That was my dad. The expansion Senators, they were only here for 11 years. I went to my first game in 1966. They left in 1971, and we didn't get baseball back here until the 2005 season. So multiple generations were lost here. Many of them became Oriole fans. I never became an Oriole fan. I'm a Washington Nationals fan, and incredibly, in my lifetime, and with an organization that was then, 15 years old, they won a World Series. I mean, that's amazing. And now it's 20 years since they came here from Montreal. And Ryan Zimmerman, Mr. National, works in the front office, going around to various places, promoting this special season coming up, and talked about it yesterday on the MLB Network with Matt Bersigian and Harold Reynolds.
Yeah, it's wild to think that it's been 20 years. But it's been a fun 20 years. And, I think back to getting called up, and basically I was playing at UVA that spring, and then that September got called up in the big leagues, and I wondered, what the heck am I doing here? Do I belong? And, all those questions that everyone sort of thinks about when that happens. And now to be sitting here talking to you guys about how the Nats have been around for 20 years and, gone to the playoffs 5 times, won the World Series. It's, it's been a pretty successful 20 years for, I don't want to say an expansion team, but basically a team coming down from Canada and not having owners at the beginning. So we've done a lot in 20 years that I think we're pretty proud of.
Yeah, that's really a fair point, too, because Major League Baseball was operating the Expos at the time of the transition. Good point. And by the way, the home run was at Nats Park. That was the kick to open the new stadium.
What do you remember about the homer, Ryan? Take us through.
I remember the first pitch was a heater right down the middle, and the umpire called it. So then, so I got to see a free one, and then I looked back at the can, and I was like, "Where was that?" And he's like, "I don't know," but. I think I've always said getting a new stadium, I think, was the first step in relevance. RFK is a stadium that has a lot of history in D.C. and people loved it. But, a baseball team needs to have their own stadium. It needs to be their identity, their home field, where their fans come. And I think even the area around it, the Navy Yard, has blossomed and grown so much over the last 20 years. Like, having that stadium and opening that stadium for that year was really the first year, in my opinion, of the organization. And, we had some lean years at the beginning, but, for a good decade there, we were either in the playoffs or in the playoff hunt. And it was a fun time for the fans and obviously for the players.
No, it's been amazing. So, the interesting thing for me, we're celebrating 20 years of the Nationals, but they were the Expos. And now, as years go by, that distances itself away from the Expos a little bit. But you were close enough to understand, hey, we're the Expos now, the Nationals. So how much did that play into? How much did you hear about that, like the Expos, and did those former players and that thought of that team? How often was that?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the guys I played with at the beginning of my career played in Montreal for a few years and talked about how much they love the city. And at the beginning, I think the Nationals were trying to create their own identity, and there was kind of that divide between the Expos and the Nationals. And as time has gone on, and I think this is a good thing, we've sort of embraced the history of Montreal as well. And there was some really good teams that played in Montreal and some great players, and we've sort of kind of cooled off on that and started to bring the history of the Expos along with us. So it's been fun to watch that and to learn about the history of Montreal. And, baseball in Canada, obviously they're still in Toronto, but, the fans in Montreal and the stadium there, I heard was a special place to play. And, so I'm all for kind of embracing both organizations and celebrating the history of 2 great teams.
So I just saw Jim Bowden in there at the early days. Man, you guys have been through some really good baseball people.
Think about like all the people that cycled through there during Ryan's 16
Frank Robinson,
Manny Acta, Riggleman, a lot of guys that had a lot of skin in the game here. And even some of the teammates you had, Brian, a lot of personalities, different ends of the spectrum. Adam Dunn, Worth, Niger Morgan went through there for a while. Not just limited to this group that we're seeing on the screen. Who are some of the personalities that kind of crafted you as a younger guy that you played with?
Yeah, at the very beginning, on the first year or two, I had guys like Brian Schneider and Nick Johnson, and Royce Clayton helped me out a ton. He was there for a few years, and, that was back when I was honestly just learning how to be a professional. And a lot of those guys, those veteran guys, when I was 20, 21 years old, taught me how to go about my business on a day-to-day basis, taught me how to do things correctly when we traveled and how to prepare for games. And, so those first 3 to 5 years, I always say, are so important when you have veteran guys that can teach you how to be a pro and how to do things the right way. And then, a lot of the guys you just put up on the screen, a lot of the guys you mentioned, Matt, Niger Morgan and Dimitri Young would be a good one to throw out there. A lot of personalities, but also just a lot of good players. And, I talk to a lot of those guys still, and, a lot of those players played many other cities. And, people like all cities, but one thing that they did say about DC is it's one of the coolest cities to play in because there's so many things you can do there that you can't do anywhere else. All the museums, all the history, all the, the political government stuff. We have opportunities to do a lot of things that other people don't. And so many people love their time in DC for that reason.
Yeah, when I played for the Orioles, I would go to Monument Park. I'd end up going up to D.C. a lot, to the Smithsonian and whatnot on off days. Hey, I want to ask you this. 2009 All-Star Gold Glove season, and then later you hurt your shoulder because people forget how good a third baseman you were. And then at the end of the career, you were gutting through it, trying to throw the ball. And what happened to his arm? So I want to ask you, what happened with the injury? Do you remember? Clearly you remember it and tried to play through it. But what happened with the shoulder injury?
Yeah, I mean, and to this day, I say that was one of the toughest things that I went through because I came up as a defensive player. I got drafted because I was an elite defensive player. And speaking of Jim Bowden, who drafted me, he kind of said, if we can just get this guy to hit, it'll be a bonus. And kind of, I still take pride in my defense, obviously, even after I moved to first. But, I came up and that was sort of my calling card. So when I went through the shoulder injury and tried to play through it, developed some bad habits, tried to drop my arm angle, do a bunch of other things. For me, I think it was physical, but it was also mentally taxing on me. And I've talked about this, when you're going through it, you're just trying to do anything you can to help the team win. Nobody wants to make errors. Nobody wants to go out there, but going out there in front of 40,000 people when you don't know that you're very confident to be able to do what you're supposed to do is a tough place to be. So, I think that was, I would say, the hardest part of my career, but I think I also learned the most about myself. And then you get the surgery and you think, oh, I'll just come back and everything will be better. And it obviously didn't work out like that. But, I miss playing third base every day when I moved over to first. I loved first base. It's funny when Gerardo Parra came over and he was talking to one of our backup catchers one day that the backup catcher didn't even know I played third base, like you said. And Parra's like, dude, what are you talking about? This guy, this guy was a good third baseman. And so it's fun to look back. And I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason. And, everyone says, oh, well, if you didn't get hurt, you could have done this or you could have been that. And I said, you could always sit there and talk about what could have been or what could have happened. And, I moved to first base. I ended up, I think, being a pretty good first baseman. It probably let me play a little bit longer than maybe I would have been able to play, and got to win a World Series. And so, it was a really tough time and a hard time mentally for me. But, at the end of the day, I wouldn't change a thing about anything that happened.
Well, you could pick it, man. That's why I brought it up. You could pick it over
for
there.
A defense first guy, finished his career with over 1,000 RBIs.
1,061 to be exact. 264 home runs, 284 home runs, and a batting average lifetime of 277. That ain't bad. And if you've been around here, you remember Ryan Zimmerman as a third baseman so good that early on people were starting to say, maybe Brooks Robinson. And if you recall, he got a $100 million extension when that was a lot of money for a star player, $100 million. And it was when he was playing third base. And then he moved to first, and a lot of people looked at the deal and said, oh, God, look how much is left, how much they're going to have to eat. And he became a very good first baseman, continued to hit, and delivered big time in that playoff. He was hurt most of that year, 2019. Look it up. I think he played less than half the regular season. But when the playoffs came around and the postseason, he was spectacular. He was huge in that. And to see him lead that team to a World Series is such a wonderful thing, given that he came up late in that first season. He was the first player ever drafted by the organization out of Virginia, and the feeling was that that he was there mainly for his glove, and he also had this knack for delivering late. The home run that they talked about, that's one of my great sports memories. It was the first game ever played at Nats Park. I was there with my dad and my son and my nephew and my brother-in-law, and I have a picture of that in my basement. It's one of the great nights that we've ever had as a family, and Zimmerman delivered the walk-off home run in the bottom of the ninth to christen that stadium. Now, they had a couple of 100 lost seasons following that, but it was just a great, wonderful memory to see that. And I remember the two boys were in high school then, and we said, if this game goes to extra innings, we're going to have to leave because you guys got to go to school tomorrow. And then Zimmerman comes up with 2 outs. Boom! Good night, everybody. So that's cool. It's 20 years. Wow, 20 years since the Nats came here. Juan Soto, former National, he's not coming back. And if you look at the money, the latest on this, and more than likely by this time next week, we'll know where he is. We'll know which team has signed Juan Soto. The only question is, outside of that, what's the money going to be? And we know that Shohei Ohtani blew the number out of the water last year. The $700 million contract that he signed over 10 years was $275 million more than the previous biggest contract. Now, Soto's not going to get that per year. He's not going to make $70 million a year. But both Buster Olney and Jeff Passan of ESPN believe that the deal could go as high as $750 million over 15 years. And this is what Scott Boras does. If you remember, he will take a guy and will extend the years just to get the dollar figure as high as possible. And when Bryce Harper, at the end of his run with the Nationals, was offered $300 million to stay, and the Lerners said, well, we know he's not going to take it. He's probably going to get $400 million someplace else. Well, he wasn't coming close to that. And Boras shopped, and finally he got the Phillies to give him a record deal. That's what he was after. He wanted to go past Giancarlo Stanton's $325 million, so he got him $330, but he had to up the years to 13 years. What the Nationals offered was actually more money per year. Now, there was a lot of deferred money in that, and I guess they didn't want to do that either. But the reality is that he had to go an extra 3 years just to get it over that $5 million hump to say that he was the highest paid player ever. Now, Soto is 26 years old. So if he's going to sign a 15-year deal, that puts him at 41. Will he still be productive at 41? You don't know. You don't know that. And you don't know what injuries are going to mean. Could he become a full-time DH? I think that's more likely than not. That's probably going to happen within the next 6 to 7 years. But the teams that are still involved in the bidding, the Yankees to keep him, though that seems to be a longer and longer shot. The vibe that's coming from the Yankees is we're not going to 750. The Mets with Steve Cohen, they may pay anything. If you ask me to handicap it with the little I know, I would say that the Mets would be the front runner. Red Sox are also in it. They're always in it when it comes to big money guys. The puzzling one to me is the Blue Jays. This is like what doesn't belong and why. And on top of the fact that they've never really been known as a big money spending team, they're in Canada. You got to pay the higher taxes. I don't know exactly how this works, but I believe it works this way. You've got to pay Canadian taxes on top of U.S. taxes. Now, I guess it gets defrayed because of the number of games that you would work in Canada. And so, I guess you split it kind of. But for the tax situation, and maybe this is something they would avoid too in a big way like Ohtani. Ohtani's not paying California taxes on the bulk of that $700 million, that maybe they defer a lot of the money to the end and he's playing for $2 million a year like Ohtani is now, just enough for groceries. I don't know. But, he was a special player here. Would have loved to have seen him play. Back in the day, that would have happened. But the Lerners, their biggest free agent grab last year was $5 million. So I don't think they're not going to be players at Piers. And there's no indication that they're going to be players in the Soto sweepstakes. Coming up, Bill Belichick, a college coach? Really? Tony and Mike on that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
If you missed it the other day, I'm going to replay in the next hour Jeffrey Wright's conversation on the Rich Eisen Show. He is a celebrity fan of the Commanders. Not only that, he's got some history with Josh Harris. He went to summer camp with him, actually knows his brother pretty well, and he's got a great voice, a terrific actor, nominated for an Academy Award last year for American Fiction, and just listening to him revel in the success of the team is really fun, and we'll get to that coming up in the next hour. Meantime, this came out of nowhere yesterday. Bill Belichick reportedly has had conversations. It didn't go as far as, say, interview for the job, but Mac Brown is out at North Carolina. He's 73 years old. Bill Belichick, I guess, is a spry 72. I've never heard of a job being filled by someone in his 70s, replacing somebody in his 70s, but this apparently is in play. There's a variety of things here, not just the age thing. He's never coached in college before. He does not seem to have the personality that you have to coach college today. You not only are recruiting players to come play for you, you got to recruit your own to stay. And does Bill Belichick seem warm and fuzzy and begging? I mean, also dealing with the NIL, dealing with agents who want to get their players paid. I mean, it's so much different now coaching college than it used to be, and he's never coached college before. All the other stuff, that's handled by, cap people, and although Belichick was technically the general manager, he didn't really do the business side as much. He had a say in it, but it's a lot different coaching in the NFL. And, it seems like the only reason that he wants to get back in is he wants Don Shula's record. It's been reported that Belichick got really upset when Don Shula kind of mocked him for Spygate, and he wants back at Shula. He's 14 away from Shula's win total in the NFL, so he needs 15 to break it. Probably be 2 seasons, wherever he goes. He's not taking over a championship caliber team. And then there's also, I don't think he's going to get to this. He's 26 away from Shula's regular season win total. So I don't think he's going to do that. But combined with postseason, and Shula didn't coach as many postseason games. Remember, they didn't have the playoff structure that they have these days. So Shula didn't get to coach as many postseason games. But he has 26 more regular season games. I don't think Belichick's ever going to get there. But why would he do this? Why would he flirt with North Carolina? And why would he? I mean, somebody leaked it, but I'm sure that he wanted it to get out there. And here's why. There's going to be jobs open for sure. There's already 3 of them, the Jets, the Saints, and the Bears, and there's going to be more in the offseason. There always is. And maybe the Cowboys are going to be in play, though he and Jerry Jones would not seem to be very good bedfellows. But it could happen. Jacksonville is going to be open, and they got a quarterback who's, kind of on the bubble now as to how good he's going to be, and Trevor Lawrence, and he's going to be coming off shoulder surgery. But there's that in place, and that's something he couldn't find after Tom Brady left New England. So there's places that he could wind up in the NFL, but although his name continues to be thrown around, I think you got to get your name out there for somebody actually interested in hiring you. There's only one other reason that I could think that he might possibly have an interest in this, and that's as a dad. We've had a lot of discussion about this week with Joe Biden pardoning his son. So he acted as a dad. We know that. I'm a dad. I would die for my son. I understand, that we're not. It's not a political discussion here, but it's acting as a dad. Bill Belichick's son is an assistant coach at the University of Washington, Steve, named after his dad. And could it be that Bill Belichick has maybe given up on the idea of coaching again in the NFL? There's no real indication of that, but let's say he has. And he's talking to North Carolina, but he wants to bring along Steve as a coordinator for a transition that he coaches, 2 or 3 years there and turns it over to his son. That could be in play, too. Other than that, I can't understand any reason why he would go to North Carolina, why he would coach college football, which seems to be pretty much the way Tony and Mike handled it yesterday on PTI.
Could you see this being a gig Bill Belichick would want? So if you had said the following sentence to me, Bill Belichick has interviewed at the University of the New York Giants, I would have said yeah, because that would make sense to me. Okay, and I'm going to consult my notes a lot because I mean, we just learned about this story, about an hour ago. North Carolina, to me, that's something that Lincoln Riley should interview for if he's worried he's going to leave USC, that they don't want him there. Not the University of Central Florida, but North Carolina. Yeah. Bill Belichick is one of the greatest coaches in the history of the NFL, and I emphasize NFL here. That's important. He's on the short list. He may be the GOAT. I find it hard to see Bill Belichick in college negotiating NIL money with a 19-year-old quarterback, understanding the transfer portal. I know, Mike, I know he's close in age to Mac Brown, who just was at North Carolina.
A year younger than Mac Brown.
A little, 6 months or something like that. But I don't see it. Do you see it? I don't.
Tony, it's interesting. You mentioned the two factors that have to be mentioned anytime you talk about a person taking the job in college sports today, particularly football and basketball, but it can be beyond that depending on the campus. You don't do that if you're a head coach. And I've had head coaches say to me, we have got to get a general manager of. We can credit our friend Woj for recognizing early on. Tony, the programs hire general managers to deal just like teams do. And this is not something Pat Riley and Phil Jackson did as coaches or Bill Belichick. The GM did that. And now the big programs, and Carolina's a big program, they have to have, Tony, this isn't optional, okay? This is requisite. You have to have a general manager of that sport in college, deal with NIL primarily, and also the transfer portal. And that is why some coaches say, I'm not doing this, and they get out. So Belichick would go with that understanding that he would do largely what he did in New England, coach the team while others would take care of these complex issues.
And that's fine. But let me just say this. Bill Belichick does not have to compete for a job at the University of North Carolina with, let's say, the guy who's coaching Tulane right now. This is Bill Belichick. If you want him, you just offer him the job. This is North Carolina, Mike. They know how it works because they had Dean Smith. They know. That's all you do.
Well, funny, Tony mentions Tulane. Their coach is John Sumrall. They're playing for the American Athletic Association Championship tonight and American Athletic Conference Championship, and they're playing Army. Matter of fact, we've got that game here on ESPN 630. And Jesse Dougherty used to cover the Nationals for the Post and now does a variety of other things, including college football. He's got a story today underlining exactly what Bill Belichick would be up against at North Carolina. That's a program on the college football landscape not that much higher up than Tulane. I mean, Tulane plays major college football in New Orleans, in a big city, and North Carolina, for whatever success Bill Belichick might have there, is always going to be a basketball school on Tobacco Road. There's just no way around that. That's one of the great blue blood basketball programs of all time. It's, what we're seeing from Signetti at Indiana, okay, maybe you have that, but Bill Belichick competes for championships. Can you win one at North Carolina? Maybe you could, but what he's going to be up against with the NIL that they talked about, Jesse outlines this very well in a story about their redshirt quarterback. And the quarterback's name is Darian Mensah. And he had never taken a snap. He goes to Tulane. They already have quarterbacks there on deals, Ty Thompson and Kai Horton. Thompson was a former five-star recruit, transferred from Oregon, signed a significant NIL deal. Horton was the backup last year, but started 3 games. Well, the competition was on. Mensah won the job, and now he's got a team that at one point was in contention to make the playoff. They're not going to do that, but they're going to be in a bowl game, and they're playing for a conference championship tonight. But here's what Belichick would be facing, same thing that's being faced now by Summerall, the coach at Tulane. And I'll read you a couple of paragraphs here. Now, bigger, richer schools could be poaching Mensah. With the transfer portal opening Monday, it's the time of year when donor money rules. Last month, tech billionaire Larry Ellison helped flip the nation's top high school quarterback from LSU to Michigan. Sure, it's an extreme example of the haves playing different financial games than the have-nots. And yes, the NCAA is trying like mad to curb the influence and spending of deep-pocketed boosters. All the while, the IRS could crack down on the nonprofit booster groups that paid de facto salaries to athletes. I mean, let's be honest here. This is how it works. When you first heard NIL, right, you thought, oh, athletes will be able to make commercials. They'll be able to sign autographs at shows and make some money. No, it's far beyond that. The collective is what they call it. That's where the cash comes in from the boosters. That's how they decide how to pay the players to either get them to stay or bring in a player from another school. As it stands, Doherty writes, the Green Wave's reality is it can't spend with the most powerful conference teams. When Summerall named Mensa the starter in August, Tulane's nonprofit booster-funded NIL collective, Fear the Wave, did give Mensa a modest deal for the season. Michael Arata, one of the collective's leaders, said it didn't feel right not to pay the new face of the program. Sure, they'd like him to stay. Throughout the year, the collective sprinkled more and more into the deal, didn't reveal the value of it, and Mensa didn't have an NIL agent until October when he signed with Young Money. Young Money. And also the nonsense of an agent. Agents, their primary function, I used one for about 20 years, the primary function is to negotiate a contract, and it's a signed contract. And my agent is an attorney. And so that's what you want. Well, when you have the NIL, there are no contracts. It's just an agreement, and there's quite a few cases. We just saw that with the quarterback who had transferred from UNLV after 3 games. He didn't get the money he was promised, so he left. And he's going to go sign someplace else where I guess he hopes he'll get the money, or they'll give him money up front, however it works. Belichick's not going to deal with that. No. I mean, look, let me tell you, you get older, you get more set in your ways. And the more set in your ways you are, the less likely you're going to do it that way. I mean, that's a totally out of control situation. One other note as we head into the weekend, and we will also have for you tomorrow the SEC championship game, which is at 4:00. We've got Texas playing Georgia. Bevo is not going to be on the sidelines for Texas. That's one of the great mascots. It's the biggest mascot in college sports. He weighs 1,700 pounds. The horn span is 58 inches. And what they're saying, where they're playing at the Superdome, there's just not enough room there. And Bevo made news back in 2019 in a pregame photo op at the Sugar Bowl when he came charging out of his pen, knocked over a police barricade, and was not permitted to travel for, it's in Atlanta this weekend, excuse me. So I've been in that stadium. Yeah, there's not a ton of sideline room there, so that's not going to happen. As far as Georgia is not bringing Uga, the Bulldog, not because of size, but he's not really up for travel, as they say. So Uga 11 is not expected to make the trip there, but we will not see Bevo. And if you've ever seen on television or been lucky enough to go to a game in Austin, as I've been, that's a great scene. When they run out of the tunnel and there's a group of people dressed as cowboys, I think there's both men and women that do this, and they run out on the field with Bevo, that gets you fired up. I mean, it's much better, I can tell you, than Major Tutty when you have a 1,700-pound bull with a horn span of 58 inches, nearly 6 feet, running out of the tunnel and firing everybody up. But in Atlanta, which is a nice stadium, that's not going to happen this weekend. They can't bring Bevo on the trip. Too bad. Eric Bieniemy got fired yesterday with UCLA, and in 2 years, really just over a year, because I guess it's 2 years. I guess he got hired in January of 2023. He has gone from, well, geez, how come this guy can't get a head coaching job to failed twice and failed in college. Now, when Bieniemy was hired by Ron Rivera, it did seem to be sort of a curious move because, Rivera was very much on thin ice. The new ownership had not yet taken place. Remember, the Harris Group was not approved until July. So it was in the works that the team was being sold, but there was no deal. It wasn't until April when it was announced that there was going to be a deal to the Harris Group, and again, not finalized until July. So what was Ron Rivera doing? And some thought, well, maybe he's looking to make the transition because he's hired somebody. If he does a good job, Bieniemy would take over for him as the head coach. Well, it didn't work out well at all, and nobody can figure out what he was doing last year, where he just wasted Brian Robinson and had essentially a rookie quarterback in Sam Howell throwing on every down. The team was last year tied for 23rd in scoring, 24th in third down efficiency. And you also heard stories of players bristling at the way he did things. It was old school. He yelled at people. Some people said, they need to be hard coached. But they said there was poor communication, disregard for feedback from players, and play calling that hindered the offense. This was his first chance to be a full-time play caller. Apparently he did some of the play calling in Kansas City, but it was mainly Andy Reid. And, you could say this was a bad situation to be in as an NFL coach anywhere, but the feeling was that, if he stays, we're gone. And I had heard that even Terry McLaurin, who is a complete bench on the team, great leader, he had privately expressed quite a bit of dissatisfaction with Eric Bieniemy. So he winds up going to UCLA. At the end of the season, maybe there was some interest from other teams, maybe not. He goes to coach at UCLA with Deshaun Foster, an old friend. And to say that they were bad is an understatement. They had a senior quarterback, Ethan Garbers. And, his passing yardage was decent, 242 yards a game, which was middle of the pack, 46th in the country. But scoring, which is what you need to do if you're running the offense, they averaged 18.4 points a game, 126th in Division I out of 133 teams. And third worst in the Big Ten. It scored more than 20 points twice. And the running game struggled. I guess he went back to throwing again. The running game struggled, 86 yards a game, fourth worst in the country. Total offense, they ranked 117 in the country, and as a team finished 5-7 and 3-6 in the Big Ten. Now, his agent is trying to spin it this way. Good luck with this. He's saying, well, Eric, he was only he wanted to sit out a year, but he wanted something to do, so he was helping out his old friend, and he was only going to be there for a year anyway. Yeah, sure. So, what we used to say, and maybe we won't say it again, hopefully, but what we used to say about the Washington situation is it's the reverse car wash. You go in clean and you come out dirty. And you could say that maybe that happened to Bieniemy. It happened here, and it happened now at UCLA. I would imagine Andy Reid might take him back. I don't know. But this is a guy who interviewed for multiple head coaching jobs. Nobody could figure out why he didn't get him. And I remember the news conference when he was introduced. Man, he's great at that. And I thought, man, this guy sounds like a head coach. But the results were not good here, and they were not good at UCLA. And he went from a hot prospect or someone whose name was mentioned quite often to be a head coach to someone I don't think he's ever realistically going to get a shot. He's now in his late 50s, and I don't think that's going to happen. Let me get to this before I replay this from the other day. This is Jeffrey Wright, who was on the Rich Eisen show, talking about how things have gone. Urban Meyer, who was a complete embarrassment with the way he handled things with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He got fired with a record of 2-11. They had a road trip to Cincinnati, and rather than fly back to Jacksonville with the team after a loss, he stayed behind and was at the bar that he owns, noodling with a young woman there, not his wife. The stories you heard about, how he would like abuse players and so forth. I mean, just a horrendous job as head coach in Jacksonville. He has been successful in college, though trouble usually follows. He usually leads the league in arrests of players, both at Florida and at Ohio State, but he won national championships in both places. So with Ryan Day clearly on the hot seat after losing to Michigan, and I would think that if they don't make it to the national championship game at least, maybe even have to win the national championship. He's probably going to be gone. And there has been speculation that Urban Meyer is going to come back. Well, that always comes with the territory. Urban Meyer won there. He's from Ohio. He's on TV. He's still in front of everybody's mind. So he felt it necessary to release a statement yesterday. Urban Meyer says, "It's come to my attention that there are reports speculating my return to the sidelines in Columbus. While I thoroughly enjoyed my 7 seasons as head coach at Ohio State, I have no interest in coaching again. I will always be a Buckeye and have full confidence in Ryan Day, his staff, and every player that puts on the scarlet and gray." Oh, please. That is, you have to release a statement just because your name is rumored? Is it what, are people banging down your door at night? "Hey, Urban, we need you to come back to Ohio State." No, that's putting it out there like, hey, if the price is right, I'm coming, right? No interest at this time. That doesn't mean in 2 weeks, if they want him to come back, that he might be interested in doing that. And look, he won in college. He won at Ohio State. I don't think there's a living coach right now. Jim Tressel, I guess, is still alive. Jim Tressel won a title, but at Ohio State. But that's, come on. He knows how the game is played. He's been at it a long time, and to put out a statement like that is crazy. Up next, we'll get to the Ravens. Ravens are also off this week. They have a bye, but we'll talk to Ryan Mink, who is their editorial director. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.